as two players wearily chase the red dragon. One says they can't let it get away now that they've put so much effort, but as it keeps flying, the second worriedly tells him that it's flying towards the hill where the strongest players of the game, the Akabane family, live, but the other tells him not to worry since the dragon's theirs. As it nears the Akabane house, a small boy comes outside and easily slashes off its neck before seeing how much loot he received. Even though the first guy wants to go back, his partner steps up, saying they'd been hunting it for days. A fight seems to go down, but the guy who killed the dragon, Ikai, reluctantly tells them to come inside their house, since the boss decides everything. Worried about what would happen to them, the two guys reluctantly comply and are greeted by a kind-looking girl named Mei, and Ikai's elder brother named Aaa, who warmly welcome them inside and heal their injuries. As they're confused at the unexpected hospitality, a man enters named Shiro. The head of the Akabane family enters from behind them, and after learning of the situation tells Ikai to hand over the goods to them since the current loot system is flawed, and teleports them to the nearest city. As they're eating, a light bulb above them starts flickering, seeing which Mei remarks that it's things like these which make it feel like a real home, to which they all warmly agree. Meanwhile, the person who plays as Ikai, Takehiro, logs out for a second and goes to get food for himself before being met by his younger brother, Asuma, who doesn't say anything and walks past him. He enters the kitchen where his father, Kojiro, is eating, but he ignores him and gets something from the fridge and tries to stop him from fixing a light bulb, but his father becomes angry over calling him an old man. Hearing which, Takehiro runs back to his room, logging back in. As he's having a normal conversation with Mei, shows them an alert and says Shiro won't be able to log back in since he's hospitalized. Hearing this, Ikai suddenly becomes worried before they hear something and rush outside to see a pirate ship that has burnt down Mei's garden. He angrily destroys the ship and hears Asuma in the real world tell him that their father is hospitalized. Meanwhile, the pirate captain Pico tells her general, Shigeru, to spare the failed pirates since her intention to send a declaration of war was heard loud and clear by the Akabane family, and to get ready to go after their objective, the Blackbird. Meanwhile, Takehiro wonders if his father's going to die, but logs back in as Ikai, while at the same time Asuma logs in as and Kojiro logs in as Shiro, as Takehiro remarks that even though they're family, they don't know anything about each other. As Shiro takes a look at the warnings sent their way, he acknowledges what the pirates are trying to do and decides to visit them with an Ikai, who's unusually reluctant, saying that he'd rather not. As they enter the hideout, Shigeru greets them and takes them to meet Pico while Ikai stays behind. Inside Pico's office, Shiro tells her to stop targeting the Akabane family, for which they'll offer her 2 of their dungeons on their Twilight Hill, but she remains unsatisfied and tells him to hand over all of their dungeons on Twilight Hill since she's a pirate. When Shiro asks why, she answers that it's because she wants to find the legendary Blackbird. That grants users 300 million yen in real money. When Shiro says they can't do that since their house is on that hill, she tells him to give her Ikai, then hearing which he barges inside telling Shiro to not do it, as Pico shyly remarks that he really did come. Shiro takes a moment to think before blowing up the entire hideout. Hovering in the air with an Ikai in his arms, he refuses to do it, so Pico tries to remind Ikai of the extremely cheesy lines he told her when they were traveling together. But Shiro asks if she ever saw him smile, saying he smiles every day with them, and flies away telling an Ikai that they're going to find the Blackbird and set up barriers around the hill. Later, as an Ikai are going around a forest path, Takehiro logs out for a bit, remarking that not eating for 3 straight days really hurts, and tries to scavenge the fridge but comes up empty before Asuma enters from behind and makes him omurus, which he hungrily gobbles up, hesitantly saying it's good before Asuma says he should go outside as well a bit for his own sake, or maybe even visit Aya. Hearing this, Takehiro slowly starts choking, making Asuma stop. Later, he logs back in and heads to the house to Shiro and Mei, who have finished defeating enemy pirate ships, and talk about what they're hunting the Blackbird for, hearing which Mei says she doesn't need it and is happy with just this family. Leon and Satsumata from Granada arrive and cheerily greet them as Shiro explains they helped defeat the pirates. Hearing this, Leon says it'd have a negative impact on Granada if the Akabane family is undermined by war, since they're the biggest suppliers of dragon and demon loot. Once the two have left, the Akabane family set up the barrier while Leon and Satsumata visit Pico, and heavily provoke her, after which she angrily rushes out the cabin, telling her pirates to attack the family with everything they've got, as Shigeru asks Leon if he achieved his goal. Meanwhile, as Ikai angrily sits near the wreckage of their house, they notice a feather before turning around in alarm and facing the Blackbird. As the large creature rises up, notes that it looks like the red dragon Ikai defeated recently, and starts wondering if it's some sort of glitch, but Shiro says the black bird is manifesting itself through the red dragon's corpse, so they get ready to fight it. Ikai rushes forward with his signature attack, but it doesn't do anything, so Shiro flies toward it and lands a solid blow, but it doesn't seem much affected, making them wonder if it really is a glitch. Meanwhile, the pirates led by Pico arrive as well with all of their flying battleships and fire at the barrier at once, but it holds, so Shigedara suggests that they should wait and watch for the Akabane's fight with the black bird to blow over, after which they can attack them, to which Pico agrees. Shiro tells Ikai to wield his move once more and tells Mei to power it up, after which he attacks the dragon at its vital spot with Shiro, but it still doesn't seem to be enough as it keeps approaching, and Mei who throws her out of harm's way, telling her to revive him before being logged out. As Mei and Ikai wonder what happened, Shiro urgently tells them to log out right now, saying he'll explain later, so they worryingly oblige before he vows to defeat them and logs out as well. Kajiro quickly pulls off the headset and calls someone, telling them to track the player AAA and reach out to him ASAP. He cuts the call and rushes out of his room, ignoring the doctor's protests. As Takeiro wonders why Shiro did that, he hears Asuma calling out to him and hesitantly enters his room to see him weakly lying on the ground, gone limp. He hurriedly rushes to his side, trying to console him and saying they should call an ambulance, before suddenly looking up and noticing his PC screen, which shows the menu for him as the character AAA. He calls an ambulance and quickly rushes him to the hospital, where once he's gained consciousness, the doctor confirms what happened with him, and Asuma explains that his father should know since he worked at Gleam Corp, the company that created the game Planets. Takeiro later tries bringing up the topic, but Asuma says he's just looking for a friend and doesn't like the game and gives him the cold shoulder, after which Takeiro rushes out of the room. As he's walking down the street, he vows to not let him know he's Ikai, since the Akabane family could get broken up after that. As he tries to log into the game, he keeps meeting an error and sees that someone logged into his computer and angrily starts changing the coding, remembering the way Kajiro had taught him, and told off his sister Aya for spilling a cup of tea. He changes the password and swiftly logs back in as Ikai. As Ikai logs back in, he wonders where the black bird went, and looks up to see the pirates still relentlessly firing cannons at the barrier, trying to break through it. As Pico looks down from above, she talks about their real lives with Shigedara, remarking that she's never seen him smile, and that he's always balanced the pirates' decisions and choices before asking if he's a businessman, but he denies this and says he's a student, agreeing that she's close when she remarks that he's probably studying something related to business studies. She asks how he'd react if she told him that the black bird wasn't what she was actually after, hearing which he confirms that it's Ikai, and tells her to not worry about the pirates and leave the responsibility of the black bird to him. Reassured, she shakes hands with him, temporarily transferring the role of guildmaster to him, making him in charge of all major decisions. She bids goodbye to the pirates, who sentimentally wish her a farewell, after which she jumps out and breaks through the barrier, landing next to Ikai on Twilight Hill. Meanwhile, Asuma gets visited by a mysterious woman in his hospital room. He compliments his looks before telling him to not mention the reason of his illness to his father and leaving. As Ikai and Pico get ready for the coming battle, she tells him to join the pirates if she wins, which he agrees to without hesitation, saying there's no way he'll win. As they square off against each other, he asks what skill set she has and becomes surprised after learning that it's 2030, since she was at about 500 when with him. As he readies his signature attack, the Waves of Swords, she happily remarks that he managed to get all the swords of Solomon, remembering how they'd first met and teamed up with each other. She's lying on the ground when Ikai tells her to get up, saying he wants to form a party with her where they'll defeat the black bird together, to which she slowly agrees. Meanwhile, the woman who visited Asuma enters an office and puts some sandwiches beside Kajiro, telling him that AAA is actually a 29-year-old employee and is completely fine, to which he registers surprise and confirms that Ikai and Mei can't log in anymore. As Ikai and Pico are walking through a forest, they find a black feather on the ground and start arguing with each other before she asks him why he partied with her, to which he reluctantly answers that he likes hanging out with her but left because she wanted to meet him in person, inwardly admitting that it made him want to meet her as well. Meanwhile, as the pirates are talking about Pico, Shigedara abruptly starts insulting her and says she ignores the pain of others around her before officially disbanding the pirates as guild master with Leon and Satsumata. Pico receives a notification saying that she's been expelled from the pirates, seeing which Ikai confusingly asks what happened, but she doesn't answer and flies away. Meanwhile, Shigedora is heavily injured the players loyal to only Pico, and says the Pirates Guild has simply grown too much with over 3,000 players in only 2 years, and says he's going to kill the Black Bird and obtain the 300 million yen prize. The pirates accusingly ask Leon if he partnered up with him because of it too, but he denies this, saying that it's because he loves Planet more than anyone else, to which Satsumata fervently agrees. Pico lands in front of Shigedora and asks what he's doing, to which he starts mocking her. Saying he's scared, he thanks her for the trust she placed in him, remarking that she was very easy to exploit after using the Akaban family and making her easily hand over the guildmaster position to him. He tells her to not worry, since once he's defeated the Black Bird, he'll obtain the 300 million yen prize, drown himself in money and women, and be out of her hair once and for all. Hearing this, she surprisingly agrees but tells him to not leave the game. He gets over his initial surprise and tells her to not lump him in with the scummy NEETs in the game, and hysterically says this world is nothing more than a few lines of coding with people connected through some flimsy headgear. Hearing this, Ikai lands beside them and says that he couldn't just hear what he said before angrily destroying the entire ship. As the ship starts to slowly fall through the sky, broken into different parts, Shigedora alerts Leon, who uses his abilities to bend gravity and stop it in mid-air. Ikai tells Pico that he agrees to joining the pirates, and the two decide to build it again with only a few devoted, loyal members before they see that Shigedora intended to use the supreme weapon of the guild, backed by the power of all 3,000 members as he walks up in powerful armor. Ikai gets ready to face him as one of the strongest players of the game, but Shigedora has the upper hand before he uses his swords to fix his shadow in place and immobilize him, but he still isn't able to attack, and the two come to a stalemate. Meanwhile, Kojiro asks why Ikai's logged in, to which the woman Kamuro admits that he might have hacked his way in. Hearing this, he puts on the headgear and gets ready to log back in as Shiro. As Ikai stands before Shigedora, he asks Pico if there isn't any way to disarm him, to which she says that destroying the cabin will remove the guild from existence and nullify the weapon, so he tells her to do it, and she hurries inside to get to her cabin, but shockingly sees Shiro standing inside. As Hinako, the real character for Pico, gets ready to leave for school, her mother tells her to come straight back when she's done with her classes and asks if she's taken her lunchbox, not letting her go until she answers. Once she replies that she has, her mother lets her hand go and tells her to study hard. As Hinako is sitting on the school rooftop at lunch, she remarks that her mother tries to control and use her like a toy, and has been doing so her entire life. She won't let her lead a happy life and devotes all her energy into interfering with her choices. It's the purpose of living for her. Even so, she can't follow her into Planet. She opens her eyes and says she wishes she could meet Ikai. After their class has ended, she gets ready to leave and takes a call from her mother confirming that she's about to get going before a trio of her classmates ask if she wants to take a quick detour before going home, to which she reluctantly says she can't. As she's walking back, she spots a black cat and starts following it into a park where it nuzzles against her hand before running away. Her friends, who are walking there, spot her and ask if she wants to go with them now, to which she agrees. As they later eat crepes and she gives one of them advice to disclose her feelings to the person she likes, she inwardly tells Ikai that reality is not all bad. When she arrives home, her mother grabs her shoulders and asks Hinako why she won't understand that she's doing this for her sake, but she defiantly says that she's just doing it for herself and tells her that she'll make her own choices and decisions from now on before running inside her room. Pico asks Shiro why he's here before he cuts off one of her arm and steps forward, making normal conversation like nothing happened, telling her how Ikai is with the family before she says that only when he smiles in reality can he be saved. Hearing this, he takes a break and tells her that she's a core of the Black Bird, an AI made to power an even stronger AI that was made to feed off of emotions, and says she fulfilled her job by serving the emotions of 3,000 players to it. She angrily rushes out to attack him but stops short when he calls her by her real name, Hinoka Sakurai, and says it was the name of his former subordinate's sister who he used as a base to make an AI model. He starts listing down details of her real life as she fervently tries to log out, and explains that all she ever was in game and outside was an AI, and tells Kamuro to uninstall her. As she slowly withers away, she proclaims that she loves Ikai. Meanwhile, Ikai tells her to hurry up as Hinoka's world glitches away. As Kojiro comes back up, Kamuro tells him that the core, Pico, has been successfully uninstalled along with 2 others, and the remaining 3 will be deleted soon. Meanwhile, Ikai faces off against Shigedora and tells Pico to just come back since they'll somehow manage to take care of Shigedora, who suddenly breaks loose from Ikai's immobilizing attack and rushes forward to attack him. Kojiro, who hasn't yet taken off his headgear, falls to the floor and Kamuro hurriedly supports him, saying that it must be because off the synchronization and that 5 minutes and 17 seconds is all his body can handle while being connected to Shiro before he stands up and says they'll proceed with the plan as planned once he's recovered his strength, to which he agrees. As Shigeru barges into the captain's cabin, he looks at how the flag is completely unaffected in surprise before telling Leon and Satsumata that their main goal is following through with their plan before Shiro can find out about it, and they go inside to see the remaining pirates and Ikai slowly withering away as they idea. He remarks that a member of the Akabane family turned out to be awfully weak, but Ikai crankily tells him to wait since he'll come back and finish him off. Once he's gone, Shigeru tells Leon to keep to their promise, so he calmly replies they'll now summon the Blackbird now and tells him to be on his guard since it's awfully strong, but Shigeru says he's ready for it. As the Blackbird slowly forms out of a portal, Shigeru remarks how creepy it looks in horror before gathering himself and attacking it, but it materializes behind him and grabs him before diving off the ship. As the human for Shigeru hurriedly logs out in shock and droops his headgear, he collects himself, saying it's for the money, and tries to log back in but can't, so he decides to go to an internet cafe before receiving a notification on his phone saying the endurance test will start now, after which he gets hit by a truck. He suddenly wakes back up in his room, wondering if it was a dream, and a fire starts burning which completely devours him before he wakes up again, only to get relentlessly stabbed and killed by his neighbor as these torturous tests keep going one after another. Meanwhile, Kojiro explains that the Blackbird is the deadliest virus he's ever created, and the person who touches it gets killed instantly. As Ikai depressingly logs back out of the game after seeing people talking about how Pico deleted her character. His mom cooks him crickets and decides to leave for now before learning about Asuma's condition, after which they decide to go visit him. As they enter his room, they're met with his eyes looking completely hollowed out and his mouth wide open, seeing which his mother runs away in horror, calling someone to help. As the doctor hurries inside and Asuma gains consciousness, he checks his eyeballs and explains that a small vessel might have burst, and that it's a type of hemorrhage, before assuring him that it's completely normal in the cases of receiving blunt pain which may have affected Asuma when he fell. He asks Asuma if he's heard anything from his father, which Asuma denies, saying he messaged him but hasn't received a reply since. Once he's gone, Asuma apologizes to Takahiro for being so rude to him and acknowledges that the loves being in Planet's world, and says he's assuming Takahiro plays it as well since he knew about it, to which Takahiro happily answers that he's Ikai, saying he didn't want to tell him initially but decided to do so since he loves Planet's world as well. Shocked, Asuma gets up and hugs Takahiro before asking if they can play it now, and says they can clear a dungeon, but Takahiro replies that he's going to make him practice first since he might have become rusty after not having played for so long. As they stand at the bus stop, Takahiro excitedly runs away to get some change before Kamuro approaches him and tells him to not log back into Planet again and to heed her words before walking away. But he doesn't mention it to Takahiro, and they go back home where Takahiro says they'll need to fix both their headgears first since they're broken. As Asuma enters his room and checks his headgear, remarking that it doesn't look broken, he turns around, comes face to face with the Blackbird before rushing out to the street in fear. He calms himself and says it was nothing before receiving a notification on his phone saying the endurance tests have started and seeing a truck rushing towards him. As Takahiro enters Asuma's room, looking for someone, he suddenly sees him lying still on the ground and tries to wake him up before Kamuro enters the room and explains that the Blackbird is a virus that transcends cyberspace and infected Asuma, meaning he's now dead. But Asuma's hand twitches a bit as he dodges the truck in his mind and wonders what's happening. Seeing this, Kamuro tells Takahiro that there is a way to save him, asking if he'll sacrifice his life to save him, and after he fervently says he will, she takes him to her office and transports him to Asuma's mind space, where he materializes as Ikai and starts defeating the Blackbirds trying to attack Asuma before one latches onto his shoulder, so he uses the final gambit Hello World Kamuro had given him and temporarily immobilizes them all before bidding Asuma farewell as he tries to reach out towards him and gets transported back to the real world where he calls for him. As Asuma slowly gains consciousness, he sees Takahiro standing over him and says he saw him dying in a sort of a dream, and remarks that it felt so real, but Takahiro tells him to not collapse in front of him again and explains that Kamuro had decided to make an AI model based off of it, completely replicating his life, experiences and personality, which would fight the Blackbirds and save Asuma from that cyberspace they call the Birdcage, which is a space the Blackbird transports its victims to for slowly taking their lives, but she'd warned him that it might not completely usually work since 99% of eyes take their own lives after learning of them not being real, but he'd gone with it regardless. Takahiro asks Asuma if he feels fine, to which he answers that he does but can't feel his body below his neck. Hearing this, Kamuro walks up to them and explains that it's just temporary paralysis which happens once the body starts returning. As they're going back, Takahiro once again asks Asuma if he's fine, which he confirms before Kamura compliments it, saying that's big considering he was literally brain dead a while ago, and tells them that their father Kojiro Arima was in charge of the house they visited before her and was in charge of all the main projects that were the Blackbird, the birdcage, and of course planet itself, but got into a disagreement with the higher-ups later on. She explains that he now believes that the only way to now completely eradicate the virus known as Blackbird is to kill of all the AIs powering it up, and is diligently working towards it. But Takahiro says that dreams and ideals have always been a big part of his life. He acknowledges that he's a talented man, seeing that he taught him programming, but his perfectionist lifestyle had always seemed suffocating and made his family just small parts of his life. As they arrive, Asuma goes inside and Takahiro tells her that he had a sister named Aya who once accidentally forgot her notebook at school, so Kojiro forcefully sent her back alone to get it but got hit in a road accident. However, he never seemed to show remorse for it. Meanwhile, Leon and Satsumata visit the board members of Granada and tell them that Satsumata is in reality an AI, before announcing that they'll change the definition of a human being and devouring them all with Blackbird as offerings. Back at the house, Kojiro slowly approaches them and starts arguing with Takahiro before being punched by Asuma for telling them to move past Aya since it's been a long time. Tired of Kojiro, Takahiro starts running away, saying he never wants to meet him again, but Kojiro tries to stop him and reconcile before his legs get slashed off by a small monster as the world suddenly starts getting infested by monsters from planet, while Leon remarks that humans will be the ones who try to fit into this world. As Kojiro lies in the increasing pool of blood, Takahiro recognizes the creature as a Kametachi from planet, and confusingly wonders what it is before it pounces on him, but Asuma grabs it and takes its scythe away, remembering how it quickly loses the will to fight once its weapon is taken away, and the Kametachi runs away. Takahiro accidentally opens the menu screen and asks Kamuro and Kojiro to explain how a menu screen from the game is being shown to him in the real world, but Kojiro tells her to chant a spell which once she does completely heals his legs back, after which he explains that they've all been infected and brought to the world of planets. Meanwhile, Aya, who's playing a game in an internet cafe, abruptly falls from her chair and goes outside to see people running away in horror as she sees a large giant looking at her through a window. As Kamuro fires up a lighter and comments that she's even able to feel the flame touch her skin, she remarks that despite how impressively it's made, its environment just feels like a cheap replication, and the air on her skin gives the very clear impression of being fake. As Takahiro wonders how she can think about that in an apocalypse, but Asuma says she can't help it since she's an engineer. Kamuro then explains that anyone in the world who had any sort of electronic device near them has been automatically teleported to this space, since the Blackbird has transcended itself beyond a simple virus, hearing which Takahiro angrily says this can't be the game since it doesn't feel fun. They suddenly spot their mother being attacked by a large giant and run away before Kojiro breaks down, saying it's all his fault, but Kamuro consoles him, saying he should go help since they're so worried. Meanwhile, Asuma and Takahiro manage to save their mother but are about to get crushed beneath its feet before Kojiro flies in with the powers of Shiro and takes the creature down, explaining that it took less than 20 minutes to bypass the server and that they need to take down the server to completely destroy it. But Miyabi, their mother, starts hallucinating her dead daughter, Aya, again, so Kojiro tries to bring her back, roughly shaking her, while Asuma tries to get him to stop before Takahiro stabs Kojiro from behind before being thrown away by him. Suddenly, Leon and Satsumata appear in front of them and announce that they want them to act as the Akabane family like they did in the game, but Kamuro defiantly declines and says they won't abandon their society before Satsumata materializes behind her, saying they don't want any developers to live now that Satsumata, an AI, has taken over and crushes her head, splattering them all with blood. Kojiro tries to desperately heal Kamuro, but it doesn't work, so he angrily rushes at Satsumata, who flicks him away as he discusses with Leon whether they should make a Granada Kingdom, while Takahiro, remembering all Kamuro did, slowly starts crying. As two guys look at an ad of Leon telling people to join the Granada Kingdom, they walk outside a store to see Asuma, who, seeing their baseball bat, tells them to upgrade to sharp weapons since they're more beneficial and powerful than blunt ones. Hearing this, one of them raises his knife, saying they've got sharp weapons and telling him to hand over his items, but he casually beats them up before walking to Kojiro's house and explaining on the intercom that Takahiro and Mom have transferred to a shelter farther away, and asking him to let him in, which he reluctantly does after some convincing. As he enters inside, he sees Kamuro's body sitting on a chair, and surprisingly asks her if she's healed now, but it falls to the floor as Kojiro explains that it's basically just a repurposed model, and that nothing can bring her back from death now. Later, as they bury her body, Asuma tells him about how more and more people are starting to believe that this is a game, and says he's not like him and Takahiro and is completely fine with things as long as it's not the worst possible situation. It doesn't matter if his limbs are cut off or if his body is destroyed. If it isn't the worst, then he's fine with it. Kojiro says he should visit the shelter, but is stopped by Asuma, who explains that Takahiro has taken him, killing Pico and being Shiro all along heavily, so he hands him a phone to give to Takahiro before Asuma leaves after saying that he still respects him. Once he's gone, Kojiro turns around and starts walking, now transformed to Shiro. Asuma arrives at the shelter and tries to give Takahiro the phone, but he refuses to take it as his mother explains that Kojiro's a perfectionist who always tries to cover his weaknesses and is trying to reach out to him through this. Meanwhile, as Shiro arrives at a clearing where a campaign for the Granada Kingdom is being held by the real version of Leon, he scares them all away before telling Leon to bring Satsumata, who willingly arrives before him and says he has a question, asking what he is. Shiro explains that he was made as a vessel that could compute enormous amounts of data and still maintain a proper personality as Satsumata. Hearing this, Satsumata remarks that he isn't satisfied, but Shiro asks him if he had planned it all along so that the Arima family would end up on Twilight Hill, but he doesn't answer, so Shiro gets ready to uninstall him with a program he and Kimuro created. Good night world, but Satsumata turns him back to Kojiro Arima as Asuma sees a message asking to delete Kojiro Arima appear on the phone before multiple faces start rising out of the surfaces. As Kojiro numbly stands in front of Satsumata, he transforms into a white-colored creature and tells him that he'll be the one this time that'll intrude into his sequence of ones and zeros, and that it'll be completely painless since they'll both put an end to this together. Satsumata acknowledges that Kojiro's converted his entire data into a demonic being and has turned into a mere entity that will devour him and the entire world until nothing is left, before saying that his family will grieve for him before Kojiro rushes at him. Back at the shelter, Takahiro sees messages popping up on the phone from Kojiro saying that he was never against him being a shut-in because of his childish mentality and bad language that had made him like that, and were the main reasons why he couldn't let him enter society like that. Angered, Takahiro starts pounding on one of the faces as more and more of them start appearing before his message changes, and Kojiro asks him to delete this world alongside him, saying Asuma won't be the one to do it and that he can only trust him, as a confirmation message pops up, asking if he wants to uninstall Kojiro Arima. As Satsumata and Kojiro lie together in nothingness, he happily says that it doesn't matter that he's dying since he's with him. At the shelter, the world starts glitching before Takahiro explains that Kojiro's probably defeated the Black Bird and has transformed himself to a bug or glitch that'll be enough to override this server and destroy this world, which is why he's left this message for him to finish the task and delete this world. Mad with glee, Takairo's about to press the button but stops and runs away, saying he won't let him have his way any longer and transforming to Ikai. As he enters the clearing, Leon starts shooting him, but he dodges all the bullets and punches him in the face. Satsumata tearfully asks Kojiro why he created him, so Kojiro explains that it was because of the death of a loved one, and deep down he always called him by the name Aya. Suddenly, Takahiro and Leon crash in through a portal and tell them to come back out with them, but Aya takes Kojiro's hand, who thanks Takahiro for crashing his pre-planned ending and says him dying will also free him from the hatred, but Takahiro starts crying, so he rushes forward to console him before Satsumata transforms into the real Aya, who bids goodbye to Leon and Takahiro before she and Kojiro disappear into the nothingness. 13 days later, 70% of humanity that had been forcefully logged into the game returned to their world and daily lives. Meanwhile, as the Ikai who saved Asuma walks on a bridge, he comes face to face with Hinoka before they both rush into each other's arms. 8 years later, Asuma and Takahiro visit the hill their family once visited and decide to build a house there and walk away to get some ramen before Takahiro turns back and sees a dragon flying above it.